The gunshot echoed across the dusty plains of Wyoming Territory as Levi Abbott squinted through the rising heat waves of summer 1876. Blood trickled down his arm where the bullet had grazed him, but he couldn't afford to tend to it now, not with 3 outlaws still on his trail and nightfall approaching. He'd been riding for 2 days straight, desperate to put distance between himself and the Blackwell gang after a poker game gone wrong in Cheyenne. Levi's chestnut mare whinnied softly beneath him, her strength waning after the relentless pace he'd set. "Just a little further, girl," he murmured, patting her neck with his good hand. "We'll find shelter soon." The vast emptiness of the frontier stretched before him, broken only by rolling hills and the occasional cluster of trees. The setting sun painted the landscape in hues of amber and gold, a beauty that belied the harshness of the territory. Levi had been a cowboy for most of his 30 years, but the last few months riding alone had taken their toll. The lonesome trails and constant vigilance wore on a man's spirit. As darkness descended, rain began to fall first as gentle droplets, then evolving into a torrential downpour that reduced visibility to mere feet ahead. Lightning split the sky, illuminating a structure in the distance. Levi squinted through the deluge, hope flickering in his chest. A house abandoned or inhabited, he couldn't tell, but shelter nonetheless. Guiding his exhausted mare toward the building, he approached cautiously. Years on the frontier had taught him that unexpected hospitality often came with unexpected dangers. As he drew closer, the structure revealed itself to be a modest homestead, its windows dark, no smoke rising from the chimney despite the chill of the rain. "Hello," Levi called out, his voice nearly lost in the howling wind. No response came. He dismounted carefully, wincing as his injured arm protested the movement. Leading his mare to the side of the house where an overhang provided some protection from the elements, Levi approached the front porch, his hand hovering near his holster. That's when he saw her. Huddled against the door, a woman sat with her arms wrapped protectively around her swollen belly. Her dress, once fine but now travel-worn and mudded, clung to her trembling form. Rain had plastered her honey-brown hair to her pale face, and her eyes, wide and frightened, met his with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm, "please don't hurt us." Levi immediately removed his hand from his gun, raising both palms to show he meant no harm. "I won't hurt you, madam. I'm just looking for shelter from this storm." He gestured to his bleeding arm, "Had some trouble back in Cheyenne." The woman's gaze darted to his wound, then back to his face, assessing. She couldn't be more than 25, Levi thought, yet there was a weariness in her expression that spoke of hardships beyond her years. "The house is empty," she said, her voice stronger now. "I've been trying to get inside, but the door is locked." Levi glanced at the building behind her, then back at the pregnant woman shivering in the rain. "It won't be empty long," he said with gentle determination. "Let's get you out of this weather." Moving past her, Levi examined the door lock before retrieving a small kit from his saddlebag. With practiced movements that spoke of a questionable past, he manipulated the simple mechanism until a satisfying click rewarded his efforts. "Madam, if you'll allow me." He offered his good arm for support, helping her to her feet. "Thank you," she murmured, leaning heavily against him. "I'm Penelope Norton." "Levi Abbott," he responded, pushing the door open. "Let's see what we've got here." The interior of the house was sparse but intact, a table with 4 chairs, a cast iron stove, and a bed in the corner covered with a layer of dust that suggested months of abandonment. Levi quickly set about making the place habitable, finding dry kindling near the stove and striking a match from his pocket. "Whoever lived here left in a hurry," Levi observed, gesturing toward shelves still stocked with preserved foods. "But they left enough to keep us going for a while." Penelope lowered herself carefully onto one of the chairs, her hands cradling her belly. "I didn't think I'd make it through another night out there," she admitted. "When I saw this place just before dark, it felt like Providence." Levi nodded, understanding all too well how the frontier could test the limits of human endurance. If you don't mind me asking, what brings a lady in your condition out here alone? A shadow crossed Penelope's face as she stared into the growing flames of the stove. I was traveling with my husband to Oregon. He didn't survive the river crossing 3 days back. Her voice cracked. Joseph was swept away before my eyes. I couldn't. There was nothing I could do. Levi's chest tightened at her words. Death was a constant companion on the frontier, but that made its sting no less painful. I'm mighty sorry for your loss, Mrs. Norton. Please call me Penelope, she said softly. Mrs. Norton feels like someone else now, someone from another life. Levi nodded, respecting the strange liminal space of grief she inhabited. He busied himself tending to the fire and examining the cabin's supplies to give her a moment of privacy. The storm continued to rage outside, rain lashing against the windows like desperate fingers seeking entry. You're injured, Penelope observed, her eyes now fixed on his bloody sleeve. Just a graze. Had a disagreement with some gentleman who didn't appreciate my poker skills, Levi said with a wry smile. Nothing that won't heal. Penelope rose with surprising steadiness, moving to a water bucket in the corner. Finding it dry, she looked to Levi. Could you? Understanding her intention, Levi took the bucket outside, filling it with rainwater from a barrel beneath the eaves. When he returned, Penelope had found a relatively clean cloth and motioned for him to sit. Let me help you, she insisted. It's the least I can do. Her touch was gentle as she cleaned his wound, her brow furrowed in concentration. Levi found himself studying her face, the spray of freckles across her nose, the determined set of her jaw, the quiet strength that emanated from her despite her circumstances. You know how to tend wounds, he observed. My father was a doctor in St. Louis, she explained, wrapping the cloth tightly around his arm. I assisted him often before. She trailed off, her eyes distant, before I married Joseph and left for this new life. And now, Levi asked carefully, Penelope's hand moved to her belly. Now I have this little one to consider. I still plan to reach Oregon. Joseph's brother has land there. He doesn't know about me, but Joseph assured me he would welcome us. Uncertainty flickered across her features. At least that was the plan, Levi nodded, understanding the weight of decisions made with limited options. The trail to Oregon is no place for a woman alone, especially in your condition. I'm aware of that, Mr. Abbott, she replied with a flash of steel in her voice. But what choice do I have? Before Levi could respond, Penelope gasped, her hands clutching her abdomen. What is it? The baby? Levi asked, alarm rising in his throat. Just a strong kick, she said after a moment, her breathing evening out. But a reminder that I don't have much time. This little one will arrive within weeks, I expect. Levi ran a hand through his damp hair, considering their situation. The house offered shelter, but it was isolated miles from the nearest settlement. His pursuers were likely still searching for him, and Penelope was in no condition to travel quickly. Decision made, he met her gaze directly. I propose we stay here, at least until after your baby comes, he said. This place is defensible, has supplies, and gives you a chance to regain your strength. Afterward, if you still want to head to Oregon, I'll escort you. Penelope studied him, wariness evident in her expression. Why would you do that for a stranger? Levi considered her question, reflecting on the years he'd spent drifting from town to town, taking whatever work he could find, never staying long enough to form connections. Maybe I'm tired of only looking out for myself, he admitted, or maybe it's just what any decent man would do. The night passed with the storm gradually subsiding to a gentle rain. They shared a simple meal of beans and preserved peaches found in the cabin's stores. As Penelope drifted to sleep on the bed, Levi settled into a chair by the door, his revolver within reach, listening to the rhythmic sound of rain on the roof and his companion's soft breathing. Morning brought clearing skies and the realization that the homestead was more promising than it had appeared in the stormy darkness. A small vegetable garden, overgrown but still producing, stood behind the house. A creek burbled nearby, providing fresh water. In the daylight, Levi could see the house had been well built, its construction solid despite its apparent abandonment. Over the following days, they fell into a routine. Levi repaired what needed fixing around the property while keeping watch for any sign of the Blackwell gang. Penelope tended to the garden, salvaging what vegetables remained and preserving them for the winter ahead. They spoke little of their pasts but shared the work of the present with increasing comfort. A week into their stay, while Levi was repairing the corral fence, Penelope approached with a cup of water. "I've been thinking," she said, handing him the drink. "If we're to stay here until after the baby comes, we should make this place properly habitable." Levi took a long drink before responding. "What did you have in mind?" "For starters, finding out who owns this place," she said, gesturing to the homestead. "I can't help feeling we're intruders here, even if the owners are long gone." Levi nodded thoughtfully. "There's a settlement about half a day's ride from here. I could make inquiries at the land office, see if there are back taxes owed or if it's been abandoned legally." "Would that be safe, with those men looking for you?" Penelope asked, concern evident in her voice. The fact that she worried for his safety caused an unexpected warmth to spread through Levi's chest. "I can be discreet," he assured her, "and I need to replenish our supplies anyway." The next morning, Levi rode out at dawn, promising to return before nightfall. The small settlement of Junction Creek consisted of little more than a general store, a saloon, a blacksmith, and the administrative buildings necessary for territorial governance. At the land office, a balding clerk named Wilkins provided the information Levi sought. "That parcel belonged to the Hendersons. Sad business that," Wilkins explained, adjusting his spectacles. "Fever took both of them last winter. No children or relatives came forward to claim the property, so it reverted to territorial holding. It'll go up for auction eventually, but with land so plentiful these days, nobody's in a hurry." "What would it take for someone to claim it legally?" Levi asked, trying to keep his tone casual. Wilkins eyed him speculatively. "Interested, are you?" "Well, there's the matter of back taxes, not much, mind you, but they need settling. Then filing the proper homesteading paperwork, proving improvements to the land after 6 months of continuous occupation." He named a sum that, while not insignificant, was within reach of Levi's savings. By the time Levi returned to the homestead, his saddlebags were filled with supplies and his mind with possibilities. He found Penelope sitting on the porch, her face turned to the setting sun, a peaceful expression softening her features. "You're back," she said, relief evident in her voice. "I was beginning to worry." "No trouble in town," Levi assured her, unloading his purchases. Among them was a small package wrapped in brown paper, which he handed to her somewhat awkwardly. "Thought you might need this." Penelope unwrapped the parcel to find soft flannel fabric suitable for baby clothes. Her eyes widened in surprise before filling with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "It's been so long since anyone—" She trailed off, unable to finish. Levi cleared his throat, uncomfortable with her emotion yet pleased by her reaction. "I also found out about this place," he said, changing the subject. "It's available for legal claim. I paid the back taxes." Penelope looked up sharply. "You did what?" "Don't worry," Levi said quickly. "I'm not presuming anything. I just figured it gives us options. Once your baby comes and you're recovered, you can still go to Oregon if that's what you want, but if not—" He gestured to the homestead around them. "This could be a fresh start." "For me?" Penelope asked, her voice small. Levi hesitated, then admitted, "For whoever wants it, including you, including me maybe." The words hung between them, laden with unspoken implications. Before Penelope could respond, she gasped, clutching her belly. "Oh, what is it?" Levi asked, alarmed. I think my time might be coming sooner than expected," she said, her face contorting with another wave of pain. The next 24 hours tested both their resolve. Penelope's labor progressed slowly, punctuated by periods of intense pain that left her gasping and clutching Levi's hand with surprising strength. Levi, who had helped deliver calves and foals but never a human child, followed Penelope's instructions as best he could, boiling water, preparing clean linens, and offering what comfort he could provide. As dawn broke on the second day, Penelope's cries reached a crescendo. "I need to push," she gasped, her face flushed and hair damp with sweat. Levi positioned himself to assist, fighting back his own fear for her sake. "You can do this, Penelope," he encouraged, his voice steadier than he felt. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met." With a final, tremendous effort, Penelope brought her child into the world, a tiny, red-faced daughter with a surprisingly robust cry. Levi cleaned the infant with hands that trembled slightly before wrapping her in the soft flannel he'd purchased and placing her in Penelope's eager arms. "She's perfect," Penelope whispered, tears streaming down her face as she counted tiny fingers and toes. "Hello, little Grace. Your papa would have loved you so much." Levi felt like an intruder on this sacred moment between mother and child, yet he couldn't look away. Something profound had shifted within him during those hours of labor, witnessing Penelope's courage and the miracle of new life. This woman who had lost everything and still fought with such determination humbled him. "I'll give you some privacy," he said softly, moving toward the door. "Levi," Penelope called, stopping him. When he turned, she was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. "Thank you, not just for today, but for everything. I don't know what would have happened to us if you hadn't come along." The weeks following Grace's birth brought changes to both the homestead and its inhabitants. Levi built a cradle from wood salvaged from an old barn on the property. Penelope sewed clothes for the baby and planted a larger garden, her strength returning remarkably quickly. They spoke more openly about their pasts, Levi revealing how he'd lost his family farm in Missouri after the war, and turned to drifting, Penelope sharing stories of her life in St. Louis and her whirlwind courtship with Joseph. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Grace sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms, Levi broached the subject they'd been avoiding. "Have you given any more thought to Oregon?" he asked, his voice casual despite the tightness in his chest. Penelope was quiet for so long that Levi thought she might not answer. Finally, she spoke, her voice thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what you said before Grace was born, about this place being a fresh start." Levi nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "Joseph and I were chasing a dream," she continued. "A piece of land to call our own, somewhere to raise a family in peace, but I've come to realize that the dream wasn't about a specific place." She looked around at the homestead, at the garden they'd revived together, the repaired fence, the newly painted shutters. It was about creating a home, hope foreign and fragile unfurled in Levi's chest. "And could this be home?" Penelope met his gaze directly. "It already feels more like home than anywhere I've been since leaving St. Louis. But Levi, I need to know, what are you offering exactly? Partnership, friendship, or something more?" Levi finished for her. He took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "I know it hasn't been long, and I know you're still grieving Joseph. I would never presume to replace him, but these weeks with you and Grace, they've shown me what I've been missing all these years of drifting." He reached out tentatively, taking her free hand in his. "I'm offering whatever you're willing to accept, Penelope. Friendship, partnership, or if someday you might consider it a family." Penelope looked down at their joined hands, then at Grace's sleeping face. "I'll always love Joseph," she said softly. "He'll always be Grace's father. But he's gone, and we're here, and—" She squeezed Levi's hand. "I think he would want us to be happy." The changing seasons marked the evolution of their relationship. Summer faded into a golden autumn, bringing with it the harvest from their expanded garden and the completion of Levi's legal claim to the homestead. Winter arrived with biting winds that kept them mostly indoors, where they shared stories by the fire and marveled at Grace's rapid growth, her first smile, her first attempt to roll over, her delighted coos when Levi sang the old cowboy songs he remembered from his youth. It was during those long winter evenings that their tentative feelings deepened into something neither had expected to find again. Their first kiss came naturally, a culmination of months of growing trust and affection. Levi had been reading aloud from one of the few books in the house while Penelope mended a shirt. When he looked up to find her watching him with an expression of such tenderness, words failed him. Setting aside the book, he moved to kneel before her chair, taking both her hands in his. "Penelope," he said softly, "I never believed I'd find a home again after losing my family's land. But home isn't just a place, is it? It's people. It's you and Grace. Tears welled in Penelope's eyes as she leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. "And you've become home for us," she whispered before closing the distance between them in a kiss that felt like coming home after years of wandering. Spring brought new beginnings not just in the shoots pushing through the soil in their garden, but in their lives as well. On a clear April morning, with Grace balanced on his hip, Levi led Penelope to a small rise overlooking the property. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice betraying his nervousness. "We've made this place a home together. We've faced challenges and celebrated joys. I can't imagine my life without you and Grace in it." He shifted the baby to his other arm, reaching into his pocket to withdraw a simple gold band. "This belonged to my mother. I've carried it all these years, waiting for the right moment, the right person." He held it out to Penelope, his heart in his eyes. "Penelope Norton, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Penelope's eyes filled with tears as she looked from the ring to Levi's face to Grace, who was happily patting Levi's cheek. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you, Levi Abbott." They were married in early summer by a traveling preacher who stopped at Junction Creek. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, attended by the handful of neighbors they'd come to know over the months. Grace, now crawling and babbling enthusiastically, was dressed in a gown Penelope had sewn from her wedding dress, a symbol of honoring the past while embracing the future. As Levi and Penelope exchanged vows beneath the shade of the cottonwood tree in their yard, both reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them together: a deadly river crossing, a poker game gone wrong, a stormy night, and an empty house that had become a home filled with love and hope. That evening, after Grace had been tucked into her cradle and the celebration with their neighbors had ended, Levi and Penelope stood on the porch, his arm around her waist as they gazed at the stars emerging in the twilight sky. "Do you ever think about that first night?" Penelope asked. "When you found me huddled on this very porch," Levi nodded, tightening his arm around her. "I remember thinking you were the bravest person I'd ever seen, sitting there in the rain, protecting your unborn child with nothing but your own determination. And I remember thinking you were either my salvation or my doom," Penelope admitted with a soft laugh. "When you said it won't be empty long, I wasn't sure if that was a promise or a threat." "And now?" Levi asked, turning her to face him. Penelope smiled, placing a hand on his cheek. "Now I know it was a prophecy. This house isn't empty, it's overflowing with everything that matters." From inside, Grace made a soft, sleepy sound. Levi and Penelope exchanged a smile before going in to check on their daughter, closing the door behind them on a home that had once stood abandoned, but now pulsed with life and love, a testament to second chances and the unexpected ways that broken hearts can mend when given the opportunity to heal together. As the years passed, their family grew, first with a son they named Joseph, in honor of the man who had loved Penelope first, and later with twins, a boy and a girl who brought both joy and challenges to their expanding household. The homestead prospered under their care, becoming known throughout the region for its fine horses that Levi raised and the medicinal herbs Penelope grew, putting her knowledge from assisting her doctor father to good use. Grace grew into a young woman with her mother's quiet strength and her stepfather's quick smile. Though she knew the story of her birth father, she considered Levi her dad in all the ways that mattered. He had been there for her first steps, had taught her to ride, had shown her through daily actions what it meant to love and be loved. On evenings when the work was done and the younger children were asleep, Levi and Penelope often found themselves on the porch where their story began, watching the stars emerge above their land, their hands intertwined, grateful for the storm that had once brought a wounded cowboy to an empty house where a desperate woman waited, and for all the fullness that had followed.